Hello internet friends, and welcome to the Legion Beta second pass look at the Retribution Paladin. And finally a class that I have a little bit more clout and understanding and some bragging rights, if you will. I did Retribution Paladin in Mists of Pandaria for all my split runs, as well as I got my gold challenge modes at the time. So I at least know a little bit more. I tried High Maul for split runs on Ret, and then realized that Warlord's Ret was just terrible. So I went Unholy Death Knight instead. But for Legion, it's looking like probably a really strong frontrunner to be my main ult again. And there's, it's not all, Doritos and pizza, and there are the most bugs I have ever posted for a spec so far. You can check out the VOD of the testing. It's in two parts because the servers went down during that period of time in the video description box below, as well as my channel guide for all my other notes and everything else, every other class that I have also tested, the bug report, as well as my little bit of notes, right? We'll go over most of it in the video here too, but the biggest thing is the 2.5 pages of bug reports, and a lot of things are, like a half a page of it is me complaining about Greater Blessing of Might being just an absolute garbage fire, and they need to remove that from the game or baseline its damage, but whatever. The biggest thing about it is that there's lots of little things that just aren't working, or little things that just don't react properly to new talents, because this spec has gone over some crazy amount of rework in the past couple of builds. So we're going to go over the basic spellbook, then we'll go over the artifact, the Ashbringer, as you see before you here, and then we'll go over all of the talents as well. But baseline, the biggest problem I've heard about Ret is that it feels great with a fully empowered Ashbringer, or at least a mostly fully empowered Ashbringer. Until you actually have it fully empowered, it's kind of like, eh. Overall, I feel that the judgment window and the change to your mastery is a lot more compelling as a gameplay decision versus Hand of Light on live right now, which is just like, hey, like 90% of your abilities do passive extra damage. And some specs, we argued about this before in the actual stream, some specs have boring masteries. That is a thing. It happens sometimes. But that usually comes down to depending on how integral your mastery is to the rotation, changing it, or if it's a passive because your base spec is a difficult thing. Warlord's Ret is a whack-a-mole, hit things that light up kind of nonsense. That is gone. That is not a thing anymore. You are really paying attention differently. You can still have a little bit of whack-a-moliness, but it's not a huge component anymore for the Ret Paladin. So your passive Sword of Light, which is hilarious, which increases the damage you deal with two-handed melee weapons by 5%. Now, it's a weirdly worded thing. This actually gives you just 5% more damage on everything you do while a two-hander is equipped. So there are some things that you'll see that I've put down for bugs that aren't actually in the tooltips properly because they're not getting this buff. This is a tuning fork. I kind of feel like, why do you need this extra 5% damage? Just put 5% more damage on like every ability and remove this stupid passive. But again, this could be a tuning fork where they just need like, okay, Ret's like 4% too weak right now, right? So we'll give him, 3% more Sword of Light damage, or 2%, or whatever they figure out math-wise. So that's just a kind of a passive. Retribution is a weird one. When a party or raid member within 40 yards dies, kicks the bucket, goes kaput, stands in the fire, you will gain 50% increased damage for 10 seconds. This is mostly a flavor buff. So it's just like you're a paladin and your ally dies and you're like, blah, 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 Super Saiyan, pff, and you go crazy for a little bit to avenge their death. It is going to be not super gameable. Also, if you have multiple allies die, all it does is refresh the buff. There's no stacking. If someone dies right after someone else dies, you'll just go back to 10 seconds. There's no weird shenanigans with multi-stacking this thing. It's just if someone dies, you get 10 seconds of this buff. If someone dies at 3 seconds remaining on that buff window, it goes right back to 10 seconds. But it's not going to really factor in too much. It will be a little bit more of your damage, but you could be on like the builder part of your rotation and then someone dies, so you're extra damage doesn't really do a whole lot. Or you could about to hit Wake of Ashes and go ham, egg, and cheese sandwiches with wings, and then, yeah, then it'll matter. But it's mostly a flavor passive. It's not going to attribute to a ton of your damage. Your mastery now is called Divine Judgment, which increases the damage of your judgment by a flat percentage, and it will cause your judgment to increase the damage taken from the judged targets from your holy power spenders by 20%. You only have a few holy power spenders. So in that judgment window, similar to how the Colossus Smash window works for arms warriors, your spenders do more damage. Of course, it also gives you more damage on judgment, which is a good buff. The mastery window on the character panel shows you your judgment window damage amplification. Then the judgment damage is just double that. The 12% base plus 8.43, which is 20%, and then times 2 is your actual judgment damage. So that's pretty simple as well. This add-on right here is called Deja Stats. It's linked below in the video description box as well if you want to use it for your testing or when the game goes live. It just fixes this really incomplete and barren stat sheet when you use the base one in the new game. And then Heart of the Crusader is a passive where you have 20% increased mounted movement speed. Does not stack with other movement speed increasing effects. It does affect your mounted speed for flying. So, for example, you have 220 when you are normally on a ground mount, and then it goes up to 430 when you are then flying. So, you pretty fast, though. Gotta go fast. And then for your basic abilities here, before I jump down and jump on the target dummies to hit some things, Templar's Verdict is your finisher that is for a single target. So 3 holy power, and it does direct holy damage based on your weapon. Then your other finisher baseline, or your other holy power spender, is Divine Storm, Sparkle Storm, Glitter Storm. It's a whirl of divine energy dealing AoE holy damage to all nearby enemies. Both cost 3 holy power. The upgraded version in the game Final Verdict, like the crazy holy hammer, the whooshunk, whooshunk, or whatever the hell it's out and made. The Templar's Verdict is your only version of that. That's gone. That crazy ranged finisher you used to have is not a thing anymore. So that is no longer in the game. No longer in the game. But everything else wise, you have Judgment, which is 30-yard range, reduced by haste. So 12-second cooldown reduced by haste, and you judge the enemy dealing holy damage, and it will by default chain to an additional target. Let's make sure there's no shenanigans going on with the Ashbringer being equipped here. It changed to 1 additional target for 35% reduced damage, and it causes the target and the one it bounced to take additional damage from your holy power spenders for 8 seconds. They brought up the judgment window to 8 seconds from 6. So it used to be a lot more of like a, oh my goodness, get the judgment window up there and get like 2 finishers off in that period of time. And now it is a little bit more lenient. And there is some extra little shenanigans you can do with talents and your artifact perk to get even more in that 8-second window. But because Judgment's reduced by haste, that once you get around like 50-ish% haste, I think the math was, you'll basically have Judgment window up almost all the time. Because hitting things without the Judgment window is obviously a DPS loss, but again, it only affects your holy power spenders. Crusader Strike went through a lot of iterations, and by default now it has 2 charges, has a recharge system based on haste, generates 1 holy power per use of Crusader Strike, and does some light physical damage. And then additionally, the new spell is called Blade of Justice, where it has a cooldown, the exact same cooldown as Judgment. It's a ranged attack, only 12 yards. However, it will generate 2 holy power when used and deals heavier physical damage. Now, there's no other way to go around this, but when you see this do critical strikes, when I go over to the dummies in a moment, there's no talent in your 60 tier, as they all modify Blade of Justice that can, like, untalent. So I have Virtue's Blade as, like, the easy passive. So Blade of Justice critical strikes now will deal 3 times normal damage. That's a crit synergy, one of the only ones you have, but just so when you see this do, like, a lot more damage than it probably should based on the tooltip, it's from this talent. More on talents, of course, later. So let's grab the Ashbringer here. You're going to see some artifact passives and perks flying off, but to show you what the rotation looks like, I'm gonna start whacking away at these mobs. So I'm just gonna be hitting buttons here to show you what you're doing here, and then I'll kind of go into a more detailed approach to how you're supposed to utilize the judgment window. And of course that changes a little bit based on your talents, but by default you want to get 5 holy power. You're gonna judge, you're gonna use a Templar's Verdict there, go back again, get some 2 TVs back and forth. By default, normally you get 2 finishers in the judgment window. So the whole build to 5 is still a very potent thing for Retribution. So again, build to 5, you hit a Blade of Justice in there, build 1 more in there, and then you go. But by default, you'll build to 5 with Crusader Strike, then you'll judge, you'll TV, you'll blade, and you'll TV again. And then you get like 1, you get to go back to Crusader Striking. The default rotation is pretty simple. And that's why it's kind of like, kind of weak, I guess, is what the feedback was, that it's kind of like, you have some leeway to not always go to 5 combo points, or holy power, excuse me, of that rogue testing. But it isn't incredibly, like, important to always go to 5. Because if you have a Blade of Justice following you up after you judge, that gives you 2 holy power, so you have enough time to get back there and build another Templar's Verdict. But you can also go to 3, and then Templar's Verdict, and then go to this, and go to that, and go to this. Because again, the judgment window is only amplifying your finisher, right? Your holy power spenders. So there's a little bit of leeway in that. You don't always have to go to 5 before you go ham a little bit. But it's very fluid. I am getting a passive proc from one of my talents right now that's helping the rotation out just a little bit, but it's not really a huge deal. But by default, it's pretty easy. And then, of course, if you want to be AoEing, by default, again, your judgment does bounce. It is built on the same architecture, sadly, of Avenger's Shield, so it looks kind of funny. But it will bounce to multiple targets, and then you can use your Glitter Storm. The Glitter Storm you're seeing fly off of my character is from the artifact weapon, so I can't not show you what it looks like without it. But by default, Glitter Storm is only going to happen at the Paladin. The amount that flies far away is extra. The damn boss dummy back there. It goes farther than the actual animation for some reason. But such as many things in World of Warcraft, right? So it's we'll run away real quick here. We Divine Steed just to get away from the dummy. There you go. So what else you have here built in is going to be, you have Flash of Light, which is your only heal. Flash of Light it heals for a little bit without the artifact. It heals for a lot more with it. Let me print this off right here. It's like 200,000 healing. There's a huge perk that gives it a ton of healing. So by default, it heals for like 129,000. But you have your only heal right here is Flash of Light. You have Cleanse Toxins to remove all poison and disease effects on the target. If and when you do so, you will have an 8-second cooldown on yourself or others. Then, of course, you still have Lay on Hands. So it's a instant 10-minute heal where you heal for your maximum health on the target. It cannot be used on a target with Forbearance and will cause Forbearance for 30 seconds. What also causes Forbearance is going to be Blessing of Protection. A little thing about Blessing of Protection, though, and then I'll jump over to Divine Shield, is that bopping someone right now makes you stop attacking. So, but if you bop someone in Legion, you can still attack. You can totally still go ham, egg, and cheese sandwiches if you bop someone. Obviously, casters can still cast, but bopping a melee was always kind of bad because then they couldn't actually attack anymore. But Blessing of Protection protects a party or raid member from all physical attacks for 10 seconds, and again, cannot be used on a target with Forbearance, and will cause Forbearance. The reduction in Forbearance right there is because of the Ashbringer. And in the same vein, Divine Shield on live will make you reduce all of your damage you deal by 50% for the Divine Shield duration. Divine Shield's a 5-minute cooldown where you protects you, the Paladin, from everything for the next 8 seconds, and it cannot be used if you have Forbearance, and causes Forbearance for 20 seconds. But just like Blessing of Protection, if you bubble, you can still attack, and you're not losing half of your DPS. So it is a massive, massive 5-minute cooldown now that doesn't have a huge drawback, just the fact that it's a 5-minute cooldown. Which is good, because having a 5-minute cooldown that would save you for everything, but then like you just cut your damage off, was kind of like a weird back and forth trade-off. The trade-off now in Legion is that it's just a long cooldown, which I think makes a whole lot more sense. You have Blessing of Freedom as well still, which places a blessing on a party. Remember, 25-second cooldown, 40-yard range, and it costs some mana, or they will be immune to all movement impairing effects for 8 seconds. Elemental Shamans, Enhancement Shamans, Shadow Priests, Ret Paladins, all those kind of hybrid-y classes still have a mana bar. The mana bar is used for utility abilities. So blessings, these two cost mana. Your heal cost mana. Your dispel cost mana. That kind of stuff, so you can't just spam it over and over and over and over and over again, has a mana cost. You have a resurrection, of course, because you have a healer in part of your class. You also have a taunt, which is right over there. So you have a taunt as well, so you can taunt things as Ret and like peel it off of your casters or your healers or whatever have you. You still have rebuke, which is your single target interrupt, which is like a backhand without a shield. It's the backhand of justice, where it's still a 4-second spell school lockout and an interrupt, of course. And what else we have here? Hand of Hindrance is new. This costs a lot of mana. 30-second cooldown, 30-yard range. It's a place a hand on a target enemy. It's a 70% slow for 10 seconds. We show this off in the VOD a bit. I was dueling with some of my other Paladin friends, testing out a whole bunch of stuff to see what was broken. Hand of Hindrance is gruelingly slow. 70% is a big deal. And when I bring this up, there's been some back and forth kerfuffle with the Ret Paladin community that now Ret is like so immobile. But you have a ranged stun, well, at least 10-yard range in Hammer of Justice, right? 6-second cooldown, 1-minute stun. You have a 30-yard range, 70% snare. Yes, it is a magic damage, magic school snare, so it can be dispelled, right? That's totally fine. But also, not everyone is as mobile anymore as well. Like, rogues are mobile, warriors have high mobility, long cooldown abilities, and then, like, demon hunters are mobile. Mages have blink. Everyone kind of has their own little bit of thing, but everyone's mobility has kind of been cut back to a degree in Legion, which to every warrior, not warriors, but warlocks, they don't like it. Warlocks got the short end of the stick on the movement ability cutback and re-fantasizing balance, but yeah, I don't think it's too big of a deal, because you can make yourself immune to movement impairing effects. You can bubble to make yourself immune to everything. You can slow someone down by a ton. You have a very easy set it and forget stun. Bam! Right? Like, you have tools to still be used, and people have to get used to those tools again. And there are some other talents to also help amplify that. So I think a lot of the hoot and hollering is a little bit unnecessary. Additionally, you have Shield of Vengeance now. This is new. So the only weird thing that's also in there for Prot, not so Prot, but Prot has other major tools. But for Ret, Divine Protection's gone. You have Divine Shield, but now your only other source of like a damage reduction is Shield of Vengeance, which is a 90-second cooldown where you create a absorption barrier around yourself that absorbs a ton of damage over 15 seconds. And when the barrier is consumed, all damage absorbed is dealt as holy damage as an AoE. So it looks like the Kaioken from Dragon Ball, or like you're powering up with your ki floating around you. It's like holy fire effect. It's kind of nice. But if this shield is fully eaten up, you'll explode in a really fancy AoE explosion. I'll show it off on the dungeon, the boss dummy over there in a moment. But it's pretty okay, but it's your only other form of DR. It's a soft DR because it's an absorb, not an actual damage reduction. But other than that, that's about everything. I think the survivability of the Ret Peli has gone down a little bit, but it's not too bad. But everyone else's survivability is also down pretty low. I would argue that rogues now are like scary strong in their own personal survivability, which can be a bit of a problem, I think. But if you're like a paladin out in the open world, you're just gonna have your blessings on yourself. And there is a little back and forth on greater blessings that I'm okay with. Blessing of Kings is a basically sacred shield for an hour. Greater Blessing of Wisdom is a 1% max health and mana regeneration every 15 seconds for an hour. And Greater Blessing of Might is a 10% chance on any attack by the blessed target to deal 30% increased damage or additional damage. It's increased, but it's based off the ability that procs Greater Blessing of Might. 10% of its 10% chance on those abilities, any ability, auto attacks, dots, executes, whatever have you, to deal 30% more damage based on that damage as holy damage, which ignores armor, and for an hour. Greater Blessing of Might is a huge problem. I'm not going to really go into it too much in this video. You could read my notes in the description box below on my Google document, or check out my half-an-hour rant on the VOD. But it's a toxic gameplay thing that I hope is changed. But as a Ret Paladin, you can actually put all 3 blessings on yourself. There actually are a couple of blessings that can stack. You can stack Wisdom and Might, but not Kings. Kings is a very, very low absorb shield. Like, what's 31,000 damage absorbed every 6 seconds when you have, like, 2 million HP? So they're still working on numbers tuning, obviously. But the thing about Greater Blessings is you can only have 3 Greater Blessings active at one time per Ret Pally, period. So you could have 3 Mights, or 3 Wisdoms, or 3 Kings, or 1 of each on 3 people in total, because 3 blessings, or on all on yourself, whatever. And when you go into combat, you can no longer use them. When you are in combat, you are not allowed to Greater Bless. I'll put these on my bars right here real quick so you see them gray out. But you no longer can move your blessings around. I think I talked about this before in my first Ret Pally video months ago, is that there was a big back and forth that, okay, well, now I'm going to be able to just, like, I'll have to move my Greater Blessing of Might around the raid depending on what part of the fight it's on. They've squashed it. You literally cannot cast blessings in combat anymore. Which kind of now sucks, because do they last through death? We'll show right now here. I'm gonna pop my my shield so you can see this little explosion. It's actually pretty big. Wow! It's pretty cool. I'll let this guy kill me real quick so you can see. If a target, then one of your allies die in combat that was blessed, the blessing is gone. And you can't re-bless someone. Blech. Right? Oh, they just put on a new build. Uh-oh. Did they actually fix that? Ah, see? This is literally live learning right now. Because a build ago, when you died, they went away. So now they actually have made it so you cannot bless in combat, but the blessings last for an hour and through death. Ah, this is exclusive for me, because when I tested, I died and they went away. That's why I was leading up to that whole, like, reveal. There was literally a new build yesterday, so they, interesting. So now blessings last forever, so you don't have to re-bless, but you only have to pick 3 people. The thing is, though, that any Ret Pally worth their salt is going to only put out 3 Greater Blessings of Might. However, confirmed for Warcraft logs, Greater Blessings of Might damage will show up as the Paladin's damage, not the blessed person. I think Skada and Recount will probably record it as the person's damage, but on an actual, like, really in-depth combat log, via, like, Warcraft logs, for example, I don't know if Mr. Robot does this yet, I'll have to ask, but it's the Paladin's damage. So, of course, any Ret Paladin are going to put 3 Blessings of Might up. Or would you not? They're not balanced around doing that, but it's going to contribute a ton of extra damage. People have argued it's like a 3% damage increase. It's just not. On certain specs that have executes, for example, like Fury Warriors, that 20% of a boss has health with Greater Blessing of Might. They will probably do more damage with execute in that 20% if they get good proc strings than the first 80% of the entire fight with just this one blessing. It's not 3% on every spec. Every spec is not created equal in this regard. That's why I hope that they make it a more streamlined ability and just make it a attack. The holy attack is based on the Blessing Paladin's stats, like Stormlash for Enhanced Shamans. But Enhanced Shaman Stormlash is random, so Greater Blessings, because you can put 3 out there, should be a more consistent form of extra damage because you can put 3 out there and it always works. But outside of your only cooldown, Avenging Wrath, which is a 2-minute cooldown where you will do 35% additional damage for 20 seconds. Wow. So your wings are still here, of course. I do believe the glyph to give more wings is still a minor glyph. I don't have the minor glyphs. I was given some minor glyphs the other day to put in this. Yeah, so Avenging Wrath depicts 4. Stop it. Depicts 4 wings. Glyph of the Queen is your guardian of kings. It summons a queen. Fire from the heavens is that your judgment crits call down fire from the sky. Pillar of light is critical heals, make a small pillar. Luminous charger, your paladin class mounts glow with holy light. All minor glyphs now are all just, you put them into the combat. You just put them into, like the, yeah, right here, see? You put minor glyphs just into the actual spell book. So that's not a huge deal. You just, and it's there. And then it shows that this is glyphed. See? I don't know how to take the glyph off, though. I have no idea. I haven't tested that far, but probably with something, Dust of Disappearance? I have no idea. But all glyphs do is just go into your spellbook now. There's no glyph UI. But you can still get your 4 wings if you want to. I wanted to make sure that's clear. So let's put that in right now, actually, just so I have that for the rest of the video. Where is that? Right here. Boop. Boop. It's kind of neat little, like, the little pink corner here. But, alright, so now Avenging Wrath will have all 4 wings again, which is fine. Let's break down the Ashbringer now, because this is where it all gets interesting. Again, like I said at the beginning of the video, that Rhett has a lot on Ashbringer, and I will jump ahead, because I have to, that you start with Wake of Ashes, which is a 30-second cooldown, where you lash out with the Ashbringer, dealing a whole bunch of radiant damage. Radiant is fire and holy damage, which is just flavorful. It ignores armor. And an additional amount of radiant damage over 6 seconds to all enemies within a 12-yard cone in front of you. And you reduce their movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. And then demon and undead enemies that are struck by this effect are stunned for 6 seconds if they're struck by Wake of Ashes. It also generates 5 holy power on cast. But this tooltip is actually not correct. Wake of Ashes by default is just the demon and undead stun, the holy power, and the frontal cleave. I believe the slow is still there, but the dot damage is from this. Oh no, the holy power is not there. So Ashes to Ashes, which is one of your golden perks and easily your first one you'll go to, is that Wake of Ashes will generate 5 holy power and cause all enemies hit to burn for radiant damage. So the default version of Wake of Ashes is just the frontal cone, the snare, and the demon and undead stun. The holy power and the dot are from Ashes to Ashes, which again, this is your first golden dragon you will unlock. You will be able to unlock this while leveling. You unlock about, I would say, between 13 to 16 perks, depending on how diligent you are while leveling. So to go over right to here, to Ashes, it's 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? You'll get this early. You'll get this immediately. There's a ton of power involved in Ashes to Ashes for your Wake of Ashes, and it's a huge source of damage, and it also looks pretty badass. Ooh. And there's the dot. So the same sort of texturizing stuff from your Shield of Vengeance, this like fire effect, is what flies out of the Ashbringer. And it also generates 5 holy power now. So the shenanigans you could do with this are to get an extra finisher, an extra holy power spender in the judgment window. Because you can fill all of it back up so fast, what you can do now is build to 5, or build to 4, I guess. Excuse me. So build to 5, you can judge, you can TV, you can hit this again, TV again, you can do 1 Wake of Ashes, and then you can hit 1 more Templar's Verdict. So you get all 3 Templar's Verdicts in that Wake of Ashes extra bonused judgment window. And that's a big component to get extra damage, obviously. It's 20% more damage, at least right now, into that 300,000 hit Templar's Verdict. And every other rotation, you have that. So the way the rotation works out right now is you're seeing it right now. I'm in the window that does not have the Wake of Ashes. And now I'm going to go back around, build again here real quick. We're going to be able to judge again. Templar's Verdict. We're going to hit a Crusader Strike. Templar's Verdict. Wake of Ashes. And 1 more Templar's Verdict. You will probably have to spend some Templar's Verdicts here and there outside the judgment window, which doesn't feel as good. But it's not a huge problem because you don't want to waste holy power, obviously. You want to keep building holy power, keep going to town, and keep putting all those TVs in that judgment window as often as you can. But the rotation has like an A and a B kind component, whereas like your A rotation with Judgment, you get 3 Templar's Verdicts off because you have Wake of Ashes, and your B rotation is just get 2 Templar's Verdicts off because you don't have Wake of Ashes up. And it helps the rotation feel smooth, where you have this back and forth teeter-totter they have to pay attention to. So it's not just completely stagnant, that's what I'm saying. And of course you have to rotate in if you're AoEing with Divine Storms, or when you're popping your wings, or whatever have you. So it's a pretty good little extra synergy there overall. And I'll get it, looks pretty great. You do this, wow. It's a huge, like, gigantic 12-yard, like, 120-degree cone in front of the Paladin. So it's very, very beneficial for both single target and AoE damage. So what else we got here? Passive-wise, we got Blade of Light, 15% more damage dealt by Crusader Strike. All right. Righteous Blade is increasing the damage dealt by your Divine Storm by 15%. Unbreakable Will is when unable to act in combat for more than 2 seconds, Ashbringer will break you free, which can only occur once every 2 minutes. This is the effect when Tyrion breaks out of the ice block during the Arthas encounter back in Wrath of the Lich King. The problem is, which I can't show you off in this video because I can't get stunned by anything, is this effect is a 2D graphic. So I hope they fix this. Like, if you look down at your character when the Unbreakable Will, like, crazy holy circle is spinning, it's a flat Doom-style graphic. So I hope they fix it to give it, like, some more 3D depth. But it's really good. It's every 2 minutes if you get stunned and you're unable to control yourself either through a stun, or a cyclone, or a fear, or a gouge, or a sap, or whatever have you. If Unbreakable Will is off global cooldown, when it's on cooldown, you get actually a debuff that shows you. But when it's off cooldown, you'll pull the light into yourself and you'll break that CC if you're, again, incapacitated or able to control your character for more than 2 seconds. The problem is right now it actually is kind of bugged and procs on things that don't always stun you for more than that. So if a cheeky rogue gives you like a 2-point kidney shot, it'll break the not kidney shot for 2 seconds because it'll end and then break itself and put you on cooldown. And then in the next 2 minutes, of course, they can stun you for all day. So it's okay, but has some shenanigans. Protector of the Ashen Blade reduces the cooldown of your Blessing of Protection by 30%. So now Bop is only a 3.5 minute cooldown, which is not too bad. Because Bop is also part of your great extra little kit of utility between Bop and Freedom and Lay on Hands and your stun. So, and of course your blessings. And then, of course, Ashes to Ashes. You'll take that right there, because that's super importante. Might of the Templar, which increases the damage dealt by your Templar's Verdict by 6%. Your heaviest source of damage outside of Wake of Ashes that I've seen. So it's a pretty good buff. It's significantly high, because you got to think, too, you're getting this stupid 5% from Sword of Light as well. So TV is going to be a lot of your damage. Holy damage ignores armor, so very, very potent. Endless Resolve reduces the duration of Forbearance by 10 seconds. So anything that you do that causes forbearance on yourself or your allies is now only a 20-second forbearance window, which is huge bonus because you can bubble yourself into a bop, or you can bop someone and lay on hands them, or vice versa. Because your big cooldowns, your big utility, has causes forbearance. It's a little bit less. That's pretty good. High Lord's Judgment. This is increasing the damage dealt by Judgment by 45%. It's basically just free mastery. But it hits for 90,000. This is where one of the bugs comes in. So, a toolkit right here that's 85,000 damage. But it hits for a solid 90,000 right there, or crits for 180,000, which is just, like, not correct. I was told that the Sword of Light passive here is not properly attributing the 5% extra damage to many abilities right now. So again, just a lot of little bugs across many abilities because of that. Embrace of the Light, or Embrace the Light, rather, increases the healing done by Flash of Light by 45%. This is how you can get, like, Flash of Lights to hit for, like, 400,000. Yeah. So, it's a pretty strong heal. You can only heal yourself so many times before your That's why it has to be probably a buffed heal, so it's not, like, throwing a wet washcloth on your back when you're on fire. Like, okay, it's fine. Wrath of the Ashbearer, that's why I got confused increases the duration of Avenging Wrath by 7.5 seconds. So now your Avenging Wrath lasts for 27.5 seconds. There's your extra wings, you special holy butterflies, you. So that's pretty big improvement overall, because it's just a lot of extra time you're in that huge damage window. So Healing Storm is your Divine Storm will also heal up to 6 nearby allied players for an amount. So this one's a little weird because it actually, with the artifact perk, will heal twice. Oh, it won't heal the target dummies. What the heck? It'll heal myself. Let me take some damage so you can see the heal. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so there's the heal on me. Healing Storm healed me for 31,000 and then another 3,000. I'll go over what that 3,000 is in a moment. But Healing Storm, it brings back like the Glitter Storm heal, so there's a little bit of extra synergy in that whole thing to bring a little extra raid healing, which it won't really amount to much. In the grand scheme of things, it'll probably just help you, like, questing out in the open world, have a little bit of extra healing. Because you lost, like, Seal of Light, you know, whatever like that, so you don't have as much, and it's not too bad. It's okay. It's attack power-based healing, I guess spell power-based healing, but it's okay. Deliver the Justice is increasing the damage dealt by Blade of Justice by 24%. Blade of Justice does physical damage baseline. So this is a pretty big buff, but again, it's of course all reduced by armor. Sharpened Edge is increasing the critical strike chance of Crusader Strike by 18%. This brings up stat weights now. I did write down here in my stat weight possibility is that you'll be probably looking at Mastery, then Haste, then Crit, and then Versatility. But there might be a bread and butter zone where you want a certain amount of Haste first. Like on live, you want like 14%, and then you want Mastery at the wazoo, and then Multi-Strike or whatever. But Multi-Strike's gone, so you probably want to have enough Haste for a certain cooldown range on like your Crusader Strike or your Judgment or whatever have you, where it feels better and makes the rotation kind of smooth, like Quicken-wise. And of course, there's also a GCD component in that way, because the more globals, the faster your global cooldown, or the lower it is, the easier it is you can get more abilities inside that Judgment window. But the Ret Pally is a 1.5 second base, and every 10% haste is 0.1 off the global. So at 50% haste, you'll be at 1 second global cooldown, and at 100% haste, you'll be at 0.75. The new global cooldown, if you are a class not at a 1 second base, like Rogues, Feral Druid, Woodwalker, Monk, you can actually go to 0.75 on the global cooldown, but that requires 100% haste. What that does is it means that if you're even at a high amount of haste normally, or there's a cooldown you have that gives you lots of haste, it doesn't make that Bloodlust or Heroism is wasted, because you can go to 100% effective haste and still gain benefit from it. Obviously, more haste will still mean more auto attacks and whatnot, but for the Ret Pally, it means just that lower global cooldown, as well as, of course, the cooldown on Blade of Justice, and Judgment, and the recharge time on Crusader Strike, so lots of benefits there. You also have Deflection, which reduces the cooldown of Shield of Vengeance by 30 seconds. So now, again, your only real, like, quote-unquote soft DR is a 90-second cooldown, 2 minutes baseline. So that helps a little bit. Obviously, it's a damage plus healing component, because you'll not take damage, right? So a damage avoidance, I guess. But it's, again, not a flat damage reduction, because no percentage involvement there. So Ashes to Ashes definitely will be first. Your second Golden Dragon will most likely be Echo of the High Lord, which the Ashbringer will mimic Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm, dealing 10% of normal damage. Which, that's the extra Ashbringer you see floating next to me. I personally think it looks a little bit dorky that, like, this random, like, possessed Ashbringer floats next to me. I kind of wish, like, you projected, like, a holy version of yourself next to you that would do the attack. Because it looks kind of... It's cool, I guess, but you're wielding the Ashbringer, and all of a sudden another Ashbringer pops out of thin air. Whatever you transmog your weapon to, that weapon will appear. So if you transmog it to, like, a big stick flies out and smacks the enemy. And the same thing happens for Divine Storm there again, because it comes out from behind me. It also casts from where you cast it, but it's, again, 10% damage, which overall is a 10% increase to all of your Divine Storm and Templar's Verdict damage. So it's fine. It's just a flat passive increase to your finishers, your Holy Power spenders, but it's just looks kind of goofy. And then your Divine Tempest is that Ashbringer will project Divine Storm forward 20 yards, damaging all enemies in its path once. And also increases the damage dealt by Divine Storm by 20%. Even with this perk on, there's no crazy like Crusaders, Justice, Divine, crap basket, weird proc rate. But Divine Storm is still weaker than Templar's Verdict by a long shot, about half as weak. A little lower than that. But again, because you get a duplicated one here, and because it will go forward and hit multiple things in front of you, it makes Divine Storm a little better for your built-in AoE. The problem is, of course, you're not going to be hitting Divine Storm unless there's like 2 or 3 or more targets around, because you're still going to want to focus on that single target damage. So, but again, only hits each target one time for the extra, like, flying Divine Storm. So this one hits everything one time, right? And then your other one hits everything only one time as well. So if I just face over here, yeah. What's weird about this is that what you're seeing there in the combat log is that the projection hits everything one time, but if you still Divine Storm at your character, like you still do the AoE, and then the projection also happens as well. So there is a double component there, because your Divine Storm will hit certain things. Like you see Raider, Dungeon, and Dungeon right here, and then you get Dungeon, Dungeon, Raider, and Raider. So you get the projection hitting everything once, yours hitting everything once, and then the Ashbringer with the Wake of the Will of the Ashbringer, Echo of the High Lord, sorry. It also gives you the same effect. So on these 3 target dummies right here, you're actually going to see, I want to say it's going to be, let me do right here, I guess. So in total, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hits. Because there's 3 and 3 for 6. And hitting this guy right here, when I AoE'd around myself initially, I hit the dummy in front of me and the one I'm next to. So 8 total hits. So it's actually a pretty high component for AoE damage. I'm just curious if you want to go for Divine Tempest or for Echo the High Lord second or third. But I'm pretty sure it'll be Echo, just because of how much damage it gives to Templar's Verdict over time. And that's single target damage is still probably the most important thing in any raiding-centered focus of any player. So you'll probably go right over here to this one and then come back down here to Divine Tempest. But talent time. Let's get a little bit interesting now. So I'll go over your, I guess your utility first. Get that out of the way. Fist of Justice is that you're dealing abilities that spend Holy Power. Anything that spends Holy Power will reduce the remaining cooldown of Hammer of Justice by 8 seconds, so you get more Hammers of Justice. No more like increased range or increased stun duration. You just get more Hammers of Justice. Repentance is a little bit interesting now. So it costs mana, has a interestingly long but short cast time, because I have only like 6% haste, so it's like a 1.75 cast time, I think. But 15-second cooldown, 30-yard range, where you force every target to meditate, incapacitating the target and dealing up to the maximum of 25% of their target's health in damage over 1 minute. Usable on demons, dragonkin, giants, humanoids, and undead. If a target is below 25% health, they will take no damage. This only also lasts for 10 seconds on a player and will only deal a little bit of that damage over that 10-second window. But if you actually CC a 100% health target for 1 minute, they'll be at 75% health when they come out of the repentance. But you can't repent something at 20% HP and it dies in the cooldown or in the duration of the ability. You can't do that, which is kind of strange. But it's fine. It's a targeted ranged sap. You also have Blinding Light, which Blinding Light, it costs some mana, has a 90-second cooldown where it's a dazzling light in all directions, blinding enemies within 10 yards for some holy damage, and it causes them to wander disoriented for 6 seconds, but holy damage effects will not break the disorient. So non-holy damage will break it. So holy damage will not break it. So you could actually still have your Judgment or your Consecrate or whatever have you. You can with a TV, you can with a Wake of Ashes, and they won't break from the 6-second AoE gouge. But it's pretty okay. It's a little damage. It's a good AoE CC utility. So it could interrupt things, or you could actually like tell your people, if you could have like a stop damage phase, so you can then not worry about the breakage. But it's probably okay. Probably the better of the 3, depending on what your content is. for like open world questing, Fist of Justice for possibly for mythic dungeons for extra CC. You can take Repentance, but as an AoE stun, you have Blinding Light. Additionally, you have Eye for an Eye. So Eye for an Eye actually is a DR. One of your only DRs, but it's a 1-minute cooldown where you reduce physical damage you take. There are some physical damage AoEs in this game, especially in Legion, at least the Ursoc Roar, the AoE Roar, is an AoE physical hit. So you could use Eye for an Eye to reduce that by 35%. Also for PvP, it'd be really good for open world questing, for whatever have you. And you'll instantly counterattack an enemy that strikes you in melee range for an amount of physical damage. So, sadly, it has a stupid effect on it where it looks just like riposte by the Outlaw Rogue. So, it doesn't always animate the effect, but you see Eye for an Eye popping off there. So, it hit me, Eye for an Eye, hit me, Eye for an Eye. It does pretty good damage back to it, but I'm pretty sure it's mostly just a leveling or PvP talent. I don't really think it'll be too useful in an actual raid setting outside of if a boss has a physical damage AoE. You also have Word of Glory, which... Word of Glory is weird. It costs 3 holy power, has a 1-minute cooldown, has a charge system, and is a 5-target, 15-yard range friendly AoE heal. It'll heal myself, the Paladin, casting it in 5 targets, up to 5 targets within 15 yards for a small amount of healing. You can double it up, you can go back to back, you can cast it twice in a row. But it has so many stipulations for having like a little bit extra like support for your group or anything. It's just holy power, which costs damage, a 1-minute recharge, which costs time, and only 2 maximum charges, which is its overall limited in effectiveness over the course of an entire raid. It looks okay, it's just Holy Nova. But it's just not going to do enough to be good enough. It's very strange, and it's very blah. Hopefully they change it. And your last one here is called Justicar's Vengeance. Now, this one I'm going to leave last because I want to show this off with other talents. Justicar's Vengeance actually can be a DPS increase. In very, very small situations. But by default, it's a 5 holy power melee range attack that deals holy damage, and it will restore health equal to the damage done. It's just like a super Crusader strike that whatever damage it deals, it'll heal you for that damage. And then it will deal double damage to targets, double damage and healing when used against a stunned target. So you stun this guy, and then whack it. Yeah, and I heal for that amount as well. So what happened to me? So yeah, Justicar's Vengeance healed me for 335,000. Because it hit for 335,000. So it's really powerful. It's not going to be more damage flat rotationally than Templar's Verdict properly. It's as by default it is a heal, but as I will go in a little bit later, there is actually a DPS gain component from this. But your last little bit of utility tier is Divine Intervention, which is a funny throwback name, but it's a personal passive where it reduces the cooldown on Divine Shield by 50%. So Divine Shield now has a 2.5 minute cooldown. So 2.5 minutes, so 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Additionally, if an attack would kill you, instead it will reduce you to 20% of your maximum health and trigger Divine Shield, but it cannot occur when Divine Shield is on cooldown or Forbearance is active on you. So if I walk over here to this guy, like, what's up? And he starts smacking me. If I go down to a killing blow radius, it will automatically proc. Which is fine. I think the better benefit of Divine Intervention is that you get to use more Divine Shields in a raid setting. I don't think you'd actually want it for the passive effect, because you want to control it, and this, of course, it's helpful. It's like a cheat death for paladins, basically. That's all it is. It's a Ret Pally cheat death. But I think if you are actively using Divine Shield more often in a raid setting to immune yourself from current damage or AoEs or whatever, you get a much shorter cooldown on that to help you live. I would not think it's there for the passive, but it could be. You also have Divine Steed, which you saw a little bit earlier. I was showing off a couple times. 45-second cooldown where you summon your holy mount to ride for 3 seconds. increasing movement speed by 100% only, and it's usable indoors or in combat. You can use it anywhere. I still am a big advocate that this would be baseline, and there should be a talent that will then amplify it to be either a lesser cooldown or last a little bit longer or do some AoE damage when you contact things. But by default, Divine Steed being a talent is kind of meh. Because your other option, which is also meh, is Seal of Light, which takes 1 to 5 holy power. You draw upon your holy energy to increase your movement speed passively by 20% for 20 seconds per holy power spent. All that goes up is the time, not the speed. So you will have a 20% sprint for a long time, 100 seconds at 5 holy power. And there was a lot of back and forth and like if this is good or not, and like other classes get such easier passive movement speed that doesn't cost you any resources, doesn't cost you any damage. And I understand that, but honestly, it lasts 100 seconds. You're gonna only cast this thing like 3 or 4 times in any raid encounter, depending on how long the encounter lasts. It costs you 5 holy power, yes. But if you time this to like, it's using the holy power that you have utilized to about to run away from something, or earlier on in the fight, or just one Wake of Ashes use, and then immediately putting up Seal of Light, because all it counts you is global. If you build the 5 holy power with like Crusader Strike and Blade of Justice by normal means, yeah, that's quite a lot of time lost for that next Templar's Verdict, right? But you can just Wake of Ashes, sadly. You can Wake of Ashes, yeah, 5, and then put your Seal of Light up, and then you're good to go. And you can easily get that as a 20% movement speed passive all the time. It just kind of sucks that it is just kind of lackluster. I kind of wish it was a little bit stronger maybe, or lasted a little bit longer, but it's also a huge passive movement speed. And like I have Ghost Wolf as Enhancement Shaman, and I lose all damage when I go into Ghost Wolf, and I have a 30% movement speed on the global cooldown, and all I can do is auto attack or leave Ghost Wolf, right? But it takes the global to go in and out of, and I can't do anything while I'm doing it. You can put up Seal of Light that lasts for 100 seconds, and then you still do anything you want for the next 100 seconds. You just lost 5 holy power. But movement speed is a DPS stat, so it's not all bad. Because getting to point A to point B or avoiding things and not dying is a DPS increase. Because dead DPS is no DPS. So let's go into your 4 tiers of damage ability. So I already went over Virtue's Blade, which blade that a bit of Justice critical strikes deal 3 times normal damage, not 3%, but 3 times. Normally a crit is double damage. This is 3 times damage now. That's what Virtue's Blade does for you. And that's why I want to reiterate this before I go over the other talents. But Final Verdict is just a passive. It's 10% more damage on your Divine Storm and 20% more damage on your Templar's Verdict. Easy, passive, early tier. Your 15s are all rotational. Execution Sentence is a weird one. And I don't know. So they've changed this thing like 900 times. It's a 20-second cooldown reduced by haste, 20-yard range, 3 holy power. The hammer slowly falls from the sky, and it deals a ton of holy damage after 7.5 seconds. So you have to put up... It's just like you put up beforehand. You put it up early. And then you get to make sure you judge before it lands. Which isn't that hard. But the judgment window, because it is a finisher, that's because Execution is a finisher, you have to make sure you're not outside the judgment window. And it's like kind of a long cooldown. So right there, I messed it up, like on purpose to show you that like now it's gonna hit, and it's gonna hit for good damage, but it's gonna hit for less damage because you can give it 20% more damage inside the judgment window. So it makes the rotation feel funny. It's obviously single target burst component, but I think it's a weird cooldown that makes the whole rotation kind of awkward because by default you cast it before you judge, and it's okay. But it's just like, it has to fall into this weird window of extra little micromanagement, which is kind of frustrating. Because you don't... I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't actually work in the window by itself. You have to put it up before the window. So you can put it up, you could cast it and then get like 2 or 3 globals and then judge, and then it's fine. Or you can just cast ES and then judge, and then you're fine as well, because Judgment Window lasts for 8 seconds. It's just kind of strange and funky, but it's a ton of damage. I mean, it's 340,000 holy damage right now for 3 holy power on 20-second cooldown, right? Whereas a Templar's Verdict without Final Verdict is moved is only 100,000 damage. So it is a flat holy power to damage ratio upgrade, but it is just kind of funky bunch. Or you have Consecrate, which is your AoE choice here. And Consecrate is very simple. You just cast it every 9 seconds, reduced by haste. It does holy damage over 8.5 seconds. The cooldown eventually will be less than the duration, so you can actually, as you have more and more haste, have down 2 Consecrates, because you will get a double effect, like a snapshot, I guess I should say. Because I can show you my face by if I put one down there, and it's dealing damage to those targets. If I barely have the duration, but you can cast it before the other one goes away. So you could have 2 Consecrates down. It looks fantastic, by the way. I love the new Consecrate. And you can have 2 of them down if you have enough haste. Which is why I wonder if haste will also have a baseline for certain cooldown reductions before you just spam mastery on your gear. The Fires of Justice is reduced the cooldown of Crusader Strike by 1.5 seconds. You've been seeing this whole time I've been testing. And it gives you a 20% chance to reduce the cost of your next damaging or holy power ability by 1%. Damaging or healing, holy power ability by 1. So by default, Crusader Strike, which is why I'm going to bring up the haste argument now, or not argument, but the topic. Crusader Strike by default, which I can't seem to think right. Where is it? Oh, I have Zeal. Go over here. Duh. I'm trolling myself. So yeah, it's a 4.5 second cooldown without Fires of Justice. With Fires of Justice, it's a 2.8 or like a 1 second base. 3 second base difference, 1.5 off the 4.5. So, but the proc on it, which is just like a different like divine purpose, it makes your next finisher cost 1 less holy power. But that TV only costs 2. So it helps quicken the rotation, not only because you're getting more Crusader Strikes more often for more holy power, but because you randomly get that Fires of Justice proc, and which helps the rotation speed up. If you get lucky, you can actually get off 3 Templar's Verdicts in the Judgment Window with just a Fires of Justice proc. But why I went over how haste might be a really big thing later on, is that with Fires of Justice and Wake of Ashes, and with lower global cooldown, you could get off 4 Templar's Verdicts in 1 Judgment Window, but the Judgment Window is so long, and eventually you'll be able to probably have it up almost all the time. It won't really be a huge deal to min-max to have that many Templar's Verdicts in. Right there, I got 3. I got 3 Templar's Verdicts without Wake of Ashes. So it's a good interaction. It's might need like a proc watch or like a pop-up to know when it's happening. But yeah, I like it. I was trolling myself with the upgraded version of Zeal. So Zeal goes back to a longer recharge system, where it's a harder physical damage attack, and then it will grant you stacks of Zeal. 2 maximum charges, of course, 1 holy power generation. It's a super version of Crusader Strike. So Zeal, what it does, though, is it'll stack a charge of Zeal every time you use it. And per stack of Zeal, up to 3 stacks, you will have a AoE hit whenever you use Zeal. The AoE hit is based on the Paladin, and it's a passive source of cleave. It's kind of like a sweeping strikes mechanic, but the jump, as it says in the combat, in the text here, the jump of the attack nearby is 40% less damage on each jump. But you could be Zealing hit 1 target, and then you will basically have like a melee chain lightning that'll be a 40% less on 1 target, and then 40% less on the second target, and then 40% less on the third target. So it's passive cleave, but it's a stronger baseline Crusader Strike than what Crusader Strike actually does in damage. But again, the trade-off is that Zeal hits harder, but Fires of Justice gives you more finishers. So that's a back and forth on, do you care about more of the Judgment Window and playing around with that, or do you just want a stronger Crusader Strike all the time that also has passive cleave? Depends on the encounter, depends on your play style. A couple different things it can depend on. Other option for rotational changes too, I guess the first 2 tiers are all rotational for Ret, is Greater Judgment. We got a comment real quick here. My damn consecration. There we go. Greater Judgment is your judgment ability will always deal a critical strike to targets that are above 85% health and will jump to 2 additional nearby enemies. So Judgment again jumps to 1 additional enemy. With Greater Judgment, it'll jump to 3 additional, so 4 total targets hit by Judgment, and each additional target hit is the 35% reduction in damage. I can only show you 3 targets here. If you want to see all the shenanigans we walked about with this Greater Judgment bouncing nonsense, check out the VOD, because we brought river beasts over, and we stood next to things and threw the hammer at different directions to see how it works. Again, because Judgment is based off of the Avenger Shield mechanics, at least how it works and how it bounces around. If you don't make it bounce properly, like you don't pick the right target in like the clump, and the dummies are obviously all stagnant in their own place, it doesn't jump the same. So you see here I hit the first dummy in the middle for 180,000 critical because he's higher health, and then it bounced to the one over on the left for 117,000, and the one over here, awkwardly, for 76. But if I attack this guy, it only bounces and hits 2 targets for damage, these 2 right here. But if you see, this target still got the Judgment debuff. So there's something wrong with how it bounces, because see here, it did damage, but it also still gave this guy the debuff. I have no idea. But if I hit the middle dummy, it goes to all 3. So something is a little bit tomfoolery there, but Greater Judgment for AoE is going to be super nice, because it's going to be AoE judgmenting 3 targets that you can then Glitter Storm all over for increased damage, and of course as adds spawn on fights, Greater Judgment will always crit on those adds to deal even more damage, of course. You already talked about Virtue's Blade multiple times. Blade of Wrath, however, is an upgraded version of your Blade of Justice now that will have the same cooldown, 12-yard range, makes the icon blue. The actual effect doesn't actually change. I suggested they should probably change the graphic effect to make it different. But this is a flat DPS increase. However, it deals less upfront damage and a dot. But the upfront damage now and the dot over 8 seconds is holy damage. So it's less burst, but actually more DPS. Again, a Virtue's Blade could crit for 300,000 or hit for 100,000. But this Blade of Wrath will consistently now, based on the flat amounts here, always do just about 120k. Almost. You're like 111, 115,000 or whatever like that. But obviously, as you gain more attack power, it'll, of course, go up in that regard. So 148,000 crit on application. And, of course, each individual dot tick should be able to crit by itself. I am pretty sure, because it's just dot. But it can theoretically do more damage than Virtue's Blade, but Virtue's Blade is more burst, but it's based on your crit. Whereas Blade of Wrath is just holy damage that then ignores armor, because all magic damage ignores armor. I'm not seeing any crits on the dot here now, but I only have 13%, so it may not actually happen that often. But it's still a flat DPS increase. And now let's get a little silly. So before I go into the Divine Hammer nonsense with AoE, I want to talk about Justicar's Vengeance and Divine Purpose. So Divine Purpose is your level 100 talent, where your Holy Power spending abilities have a 50% chance to make your next Holy Power spending ability free. We know what this does. We know the whack-a-mole it can create. But take now, for example, the Fires of Justice. And we'll just take Final Verdict, because I hate Execution Sentence now. And this makes your next Holy Power spending ability free. Justicar's Vengeance costs 5. But if Divine Purpose procs, it would be free. And that's kind of a big problem. Because by default, Justicar's Vengeance should be being used in the rotation as a heal. Like, that's the whole point of it. But if you get a Divine Purpose proc, you get a free Justicar's Vengeance, which hits for so much extra damage. I'm not sure if that's an intentional thing. It, of course, works in the Judgment window as well, so it'll do obviously a 15% chance on Divine Purpose to happen. Maybe they're balancing it around that. But that makes Justicar's Vengeance a mandatory take for just DPS. It just makes it a mandatory thing. So Judgment, and then you get this BAM! I'm not sure if that's intentional. I kind of feel like Justicar's Vengeance should not do that. But now to expound upon Justicar's Vengeance in a weird way, which could be a bug or could not be a bug, is that this ability right here does not do damage properly to weaker enemies. It only does damage to and heals you for effective damage. So if you attack someone with a Power Word Shield, or a Clarity of Will, or someone that has less HP than the actual damage strike, you only get that much damage and or that much healing, and the absorb effect makes it do 0 damage. So you get 0 healing. Which could be the balance point of it, because you can't use it like Divine Purpose on certain people or creatures or mobs. But I don't think it's going to be balanced around this way, because that's a lot of extra damage that's a little bit strange. That it feels like it's not meant to do that. Like, maybe Justicar's Vengeance should not work with Divine Purpose, or maybe it should because it gives more variance to the rotation. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you think that Justicar's Vengeance is supposed to work like this, but it's weird because this makes it like a... You do get Word of Glory with Divine Purpose, but Word of Glory has charges. Justicar's Vengeance has no charges. So you can just keep using it if you keep getting procs. It's just so much free damage that I wonder if they really want that to be a thing. But alright, let's go over Divine Hammer. I got a combat here. Divine Hammer, Consecration, Greater Judgment. We're going to take the new version of Crusade. So Crusade replaces Avenging Wrath, same cooldown period. What this does now, though, is it gives you a damage ramping, higher DPS ability. And this ability, Crusade itself, won't really probably turn on until you actually have Wrath of the Ashbringer. What happens here is that you get a stacking buff that goes up to 20 stacks. Sorry, 15 stacks. Wow. 15 stacks at 2% damage increase and haste. But what's weird about that is that it takes a while to stack up to the 15 stacks to get 30% damage and haste. But 30% is less than the 35 from Avenging Wrath. But Avenging Wrath is only damage and healing. But Crusade is damage and haste. So haste makes the rotation faster. At 30% haste, it's a 0.3 off your global. It's less damage flatly, no healing component. But because you have more haste and 30% damage, you'll actually show off that it probably still means more overall damage. Same graphic effect happens. You want to actually have Holy Power spenders to have in here. Because what happens is that each Holy Power spent during Crusade will increase its damage and haste by 2%. So you want to spend like 3 Holy Power very quickly. But again, Justicar's Vengeance now comes into play. That this costs 5 Holy Power, and you can actually use it to give you 5 stacks. So is that the best way to stack it up immediately, is to have Justicar's Vengeance, and you pop Crusade, and you have 5 Holy Power, and you Justicar's Vengeance, and then you Wake of Ashes, and then you Justicar's Vengeance, so you have 10 stacks immediately, and then you build and spend and build and spend, and then you're at 15. Is that the whole purpose? Again, this ability has so many little weird... I'm just not sure. I think it needs to do less damage up front, but then heal for like double the damage it deals or whatever. So you don't use it in these weird shenanigan-y effects, but I could be wrong. But anyway, Divine Hammer. Let's look at the Ret Pally AoE, which is so fun and ridiculous, but let's do it. So Consecrate, Greater Judgment, Divine Hammer. Divine Hammer replaces Blade of Justice, and you have a spinning hammer around you. Cooldown is 8 seconds, reduced by haste, where the hammers spin around you for 8 yards, and they deal initial holy damage, and then the same holy damage every 1.9 seconds, which is a 2-second window, reduced by haste. So you have more ticks if you have more haste. So again, Crusade possibility for AoE burst, Well, it's mostly like AoE consistent damage, but whatever. And then you get 1 holy power generation. So you can do some of this, and it'll just be this whirling torrent of holy power. And the more ret pallies you have, it actually gets a little, obviously, more crazy. But you have constant AoE damage from your hammers. You have constant AoE damage from your consecrate. And then you have extra AoE damage coming in from your actual Divine Storm. And you have more AoE damage, and you're amplifying your AoE damage of Divine Storm with your Judgment. So it's not really bursty. I misspoke. It's just very constant. Because you have all this holy damage going on that's all ignoring armor, and it's just never ending. It's just this nonsensical, never-ending AoE cluster that you just keep going and going and going. And the more haste you have, the more haste you get on your gear. Or now if I use Crusade real quick here, well, we'll use that. Just try to spell some holy power real quick here, just so we can get up to the faster haste. As you gain more and more haste, of course, the rotation gets even faster. And you'll do more damage, of course, this whole time. It lowers the cooldown of Consecrate, so you can stack more Consecrates. Lowers the cooldown of your Judgments to get more Judgments. But it's not too bad. Of course, you want to have more haste based on your actual gear. But again, see, I barely could stack up to 15 stacks right there. Because I wasn't using Justicar's Vengeance to go 5, wake 5. And that's why Crusade is kind of strange. And also why Justicar's Vengeance is kind of strange. But I think there's a lot going on here with talents. I mean, you have AoE, 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 right? You have a better version of your passive damage cooldown. You also have Divine Purpose, which could be really good with... Divine Purpose could be really good with, like, Blade of Wrath, which is just a straight single target DPS increase, with Zeal or Fires of Justice. Probably Fires of Justice a little bit more, but Zeal is also just harder hating Crusader Strike, so that's up to you. And then you can take ES. ES is mathematically just so much better, but because of the weird window of time you have to make it work, that it's just like, ah. But that is the Ret Paladin. The Retribution is strong with this one. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you made it all the way through this video, which is a little bit longer, because I went a little long-winded on a little bit of the things earlier on in this video, because damn you, Greater Blessing of Might. Then type that in the comments. We did it. We'll bring back the we did it for this video. And leave a like if you enjoyed the... my brain went away from it there. I was like, what am I talking about? Where am I right now? But leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Again, the VOD, my notes, and everything else is linked down below in the video description box, as well as ways to help support what I do, my Twitch channel, all that good stuff down below. Again, let me know what you think of the Ret Pally below. If I missed some things, if you have any questions, go for it. I like to keep up on my comments, of course. Don't type me a Bible about what I did wrong or talked about wrong or what you think about it. Leave that for the forums. But if you want to join the conversation, please do. And I will see you all in the next Legion testing video.